Hello world of YouTube and welcome to the May listening log update. I have 16 albums to get to, but I will let you guys know I'm out of suggestions. So if there's something you want to see me cover on this segment, leave it in the comments down below, and I'll throw it on the list. Wanted to keep the intro short though, let's cut to the first album.
And if we don't get what we want, we gonna take it. Yeah, this is my scene.
Now, longtime subscribers would know that I've actually talked about Skindred in the past. I did a discography review on them back in 2011. I did their first album through their album Union Black, and I never talked about any of their albums since then, but they've put out a few, and I've listened to Kill the Power, I've listened to Volume, and I was honestly going into this with less than high hopes, only because Skindred's one of those bands where I really like listening to their previous records, but given I didn't listen to their output in 2015, I've had zero interest in their stuff post what I got into them with, and I wasn't completely let down by this, but I was surprised in a few aspects. I didn't expect them to do this more classic rock influenced style, especially with this album called Big Tings. I was hoping for a little more of a grimy influence because ting is a very grime thing to say. But nevertheless, this is a very 80s rock influence like Def Leppard and AC/DC, and while they've covered Back in Black in the past, they did their kind of reggae twist on it, and I will say it's not horribly done. Benji's voice suits this style pretty well, but I was a little let down that they've I feel like they've lost a little bit of their identity on here. Not to say that their identity was just this gimmick, but it's almost like when Avenged Sevenfold did Hail to the King, only this isn't nearly as bad as that. The band still is in top form here. They can all play their craft well, and there's a lot of dynamics going on here. There's, tracks like Tell Me that are a little more soft and soulful that I think work with Benji's voice a little better than songs like Machine and that are just a little more straightforward rock, hard rock influenced. And their reggae overtones kind of come back in some tracks like Loud and Clear, which I think are great to hear. But I do think that this album shows Skindred having interest in doing other styles, and while I wish them luck on those further excursions, I wasn't fully impressed by them here. I do like some of them, but not all of them. I give this thing like a 5 out of 10. I was really warm with it upon my first couple of listens, but as I continued to listen to it, my disinterest in the album grew as I continued to listen to it, is what I'm trying to say. I didn't expect Giraffes to come back. I actually really enjoy these guys' excursions into math rock, and I think that they provide a really good almost template for instrumental math rock bands to really follow, and on this album they play that pretty straight. It's pretty straightforward, a lot of really good math rock with some more drawn out passages with a little bit of a post-rock influence, which isn't a bad thing. If you like by the numbers math rock, which I do to a degree, I'm a little more excusable of it than maybe some others. I do think that they have a good job at keeping things interesting with changing up the syncopation or changing the time signature or doing things at a time that works. They don't keep anything too drawn out, and even the more elongated passages are well paced and well composed. That's about it. I mean, there's no moments that stick out to me. It's just consistently by the numbers, well-constructed math rock. It doesn't add anything too new to the ethos of the genre and doesn't really do anything that isn't good. I mean, I know I'm not saying much, but it does sit at like an 8 out of 10 for me. I've enjoyed my experience with this record. I guess it's a little bit of a slack to the record that I can't say that there's an actual song or moment that jumped out at me. But the last couple of years, I've invested time into just a random math rock album, and I've generally walked away liking it. These guys are just a math rock band that I know does it well, and they continue that craft of doing it well here.
This lasts forever. Sunny, money, keep it funky, top it, let it down.
This month has been a gambit of great releases. Memory Lane was the first one, but this was the album that really wholly impressed me this month, and for the longest time, it was my album of the month. But there were many contenders that stepped up to the plate and tried to knock Dirty Computer off of its throne, and one eventually did, but damn if this is not a strong contender for Album of the Year. I just can't put this thing down. It is infectiously groovy. It is so catchy. It just hurts. Like, I've liked Janelle Monáe's work in the past. I think Anarchic Android is a hell of a debut album, and she's kept that train going pretty steady, but this thing just floored me. This thing's runtime is just packed with immaculate track after immaculate track. It could have easily flopped, and it doesn't. Janelle sticks the landing in so many aspects. This is not only a smart record in a lot of aspects lyrically, it is very forward-thinking in a lot of really good ways. This is what I would consider a feminist album. You know, a lot of articles and a lot of websites try to bait that term around, you know, feminist, this is really good for feminism. I think this is really good for feminism. I mean, I think the lyrics are just so empowering. They're saucy, they're very sensual, and they're very sexy, and they're very just sharp. There's some songs that are not as sharply written as others. They get a little buzzwordy. I'm looking at you, the closer, while I really like your flow. Boy, do your lyrics just get a little too buzzwordy. But, I mean, this thing is great. This thing is a gauntlet of just Janelle's finest hour. And I can't recommend this thing more. I've pushed this record onto a lot of people in the past month, and that's because it is very well crafted. I mean, from the softer moments to Pink with that explosion into the first chorus, to the just dreary, smaller interludes, to just that first opening of Dirty Computer with those Brian Wilson harmonies. It is a truly addictive experience, and I give it like a 9 out of 10. I will not let my love of mathy, angry music die, god damn it. Even though my favorite band in the genre has left me, I will look for it wherever I can. And that's how I'm finally getting into Rolo Tomassi, a band I've been wanting to get into for the better half of the last 8 years through various podcasts. I'm finally sitting down and listening to their latest, Time Will Die and Love Will Bury It, and you know what? It's pretty damn good. It's a lot more sporadic than I thought it would be, given its very harsh and bleak-looking album cover, and thinking about what I know about the band. I wasn't expecting these songs that have very jazzy-influenced passages. There are many of the songs here that break up their harsh, gritty guitars and their just dense, jagged vocals with some really soothing, calm, jazzy passages that kind of took me aback and made me want to invest more into this band's catalog. I think their vocalist has some really nice chops. She can go toe-to-toe with the best of them in the genre. She's really good at not only letting her voice soar on some of the cleaner cuts on the record that I'm not the biggest fan of, but I do think work, and they tap into that kind of pusciato-ness that I'm wanting from my dance music. Her voice cuts in such a harsh way that I also wasn't expecting. I don't hear many female vocalists attempting to do this in this facet, and she sticks the landing. I don't think the writing is everything that I would want from this type of music. Lyrically, I think bands like Converge and definitely Dillinger pen it a little better, but I think these guys do have a good craft, and I think that there's a reason why they stuck around so long. It's that they can make records like this that just are aesthetically pleasing to fans of their respective genres. I give it like an 8 out of 10. Again, this month has a lot of really positive reviews, and this is another one that just, I was fully enthralled with my experience, even if I didn't walk away with anything super substantial. It's just consistently really well done, mathy music with some small, softer elements. Cancer Bats! Fucking Canadian hardcore guys, have been listening to them since like 2009. I've always thought their records were good. There have been very few of their albums that have wholly wowed me, and I think this is a great example as to why I think that is. While I like that they're a hardcore band with sludgy-ish elements and some southern rock elements in the mix, it's all atonal. Like, it's all just barrage of just pummeling to the face. And while I like that to some degree, the production on this creates a little more of an exhausting experience. These guys are kings of the gritty brick production style, and it works in doses. And on this record, they do flex their more catchier moments. They almost take influence from bands like Kvelertak, but I think bands like Kvelertak do it a little better, of blending that southern rootsy sludginess with a little bit of a hardcore edge. While I don't think it's bad, I do think it's a good experience. It's not something that I would say is an idea that I walk away loving. I mean, there are tracks where they get a little catchy, like some of the earlier tracks on the record, Rerun Free and Space and Time, which are good at kind of changing their pace or doing what they've done in the past in an even softer manner. It's just, I want a little more. Just a little more. I do feel like I'm being really harsh on this record. Like I said, their brick, jagged production isn't horrible. Like, tracks like their closer, Winterpeg, that fucking bass line. And even on Space and Time, that bass line is fucking great. And Rattlesnake, shit reminds me of some shit like Every Time Would Die would do. I do genuinely like these guys. I just, for years, have wanted them to do something a little more. They've teased other ideas in the earlier work, but they've kind of stuck into this brick production lane with some pockets of intrigue that I just want more of. They still kind of sit in that mid-tier section of just gritty, angry. They don't have a whole lot of dynamics to their music that I feel like if they fleshed out a little more could give them a little more character. But again, I did enjoy this thing. I didn't hate it. I do give it like a 6 out of 10. Could be better. Could be a lot worse.
There's no way.
Yo La Tengo's latest There's a Riot Going On was a suggestion that was given to me a couple months ago that I finally sank my teeth into, and I enjoyed it. I'm not the biggest Yo La Tengo aficionado. I do like what chunks of their discography I heard. I also think they can write a really damn enthralling soundtrack to a film. But this is the first of a few projects that I've actually sat down and ingested, and I think it's pretty good. It's pretty solid. These guys do a little more ambience than I kind of was expecting with their sound. Like, I know that they get a little shoegazy at points, but I was expecting a little more of an indie twinge twist, almost like a Diet Wilco, but it's a lot more cerebral. The album does kind of sit with you a little more than I was at least expecting. Some who are a little more versed in Yo La Tengo may say otherwise, but what is here isn't bad. There's a lot of elongated instrumental passages that I think could be fleshed out a little more. They could have done a little more with their compositional work, with these sections where there's really not a whole lot going on. It meanders a smidge, but not in a way that is consistently detracting. It only happens in a couple of points on the record. These guys show that they can still do it in a way that's interesting. Tracks like Ashes, I kind of wish I could have heard a little more from, that could have been fleshed out a little more. That's kind of a good example of that thing I was talking about, that kind of not so much nuanced sound I was hoping from a band of this caliber. Like, if you like Yo La Tengo, you probably have already heard this and you probably like it. It's the most just good album I've heard so far this year. I would look into their Golden Age material before this, but this isn't bad. It's pretty good. I'll give it like a 7 out of 10. Yeah.
The exotic sound of data storage.
This is the album I'm sure some of you were waiting for me to talk about. Arctic Monkeys' latest, Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, is a divisive album. It is a huge, drastic shift in direction and sound that no one was really expecting, and I love it. I've seen so many people be lukewarm to this album, and I've seen people slam this record. This is not a popular album in the Arctic Monkeys community, from what I'm seeing, but I think this was kind of needed to give their career a new boost, because I'm in the crowd that's not the biggest fan of AM. I like their first two albums. I have not given anything post those two outside of AM much listen since their initial release. I don't think they're bad, but I do feel like they needed something else to reinvigorate themselves as musicians, and I think this style, this concept, the way that this was written just works. And I really became invested in the character these guys were trying to play. I love the soundscape. I fucking love Alex Turner's David Bowie impression. I think it fucking works. I think if David Bowie's not gonna make it anymore, because he can't, this is the next best thing. I mean, you guys know me. I'm a sucker for science fiction. My house is a fucking mural to the genre. And I think it's cool that they took this kind of concept, the spacey concept, and threw in a lounge aspect. Another genre I genuinely love. I'm a huge fan of Chiba Mato. I think Chiba Mato's great. Their last record, which nobody talked about, I was a huge fucking fan of. And it was very lounge and Shibuya influenced. So this is a little more up my alley than I was expecting from the Arctic Monkeys. I like how outside of the first song, which gets a little meta for the band, they really just kind of spend the whole time lyrically just getting you into this casino, this place that they're playing, and some of the guests. I think it's a really, I really like the nuance, the lyrical nuance that they just go with here, you know what I mean? It gets a little, like, cheesy at points, but I fucking like that a lot. I'm sitting with this thing at an 8. That might grow if I sit with this album more. I think that this either killed or saved their career, depending on who you ask. Like I said, this month gave me so many albums that were great, that were trying to dethrone Janelle Monáe, and Beach House came close, but they didn't do it. 7, however, is still a fucking great record. Very ethereal and just atmospheric as shit. It is colossal with its soundscape. I mean, a little bit of my opinion on their past work. I like Beach House. I like Teen Dream. I like Bloom. I thought fucking Depression Cherry was alright. I didn't listen to Thank You Lucky Stars because I just forgot about it. But I like this kind of dreamy, shoegazy sound. I mean, I like records last year, as you saw on my of the year list. I like that sound, and I think these guys, especially on this record, tap into that shoegazy element in a really different way for them that's more akin to the genre. Some of the noisier tones on this thing kind of surprised me because, I don't know, I feel like Beach House has always been that kind of band you just smoke weed and sometimes make out to, depending on who you're with. And this, while it has that style, is very more indebted to drearier, shoegazy elements, I feel like, than their previous material. It's a lot more cerebral, like the new Yo La Tango, but in a different, more satisfying way. I like the denseness in this music. I like my ambient music when it's dense, and I think these guys do it really well. The vocals on here suit the style really well, too. The mixing on this thing is just golden. When Dark Spring hit and Pain O' Mind, with its a very noisy, like, there's some guitar tones in those early songs that just took me back a little bit, because I wasn't expecting it. And it doesn't lose its catchy appeal, like that Dream pop. The pop isn't lost. Songs like Who, it's got some catchy melodies in it. Drunk in LA has some catchy moments in it, but it doesn't feel like a split personality. This album knows what it is, and it just does it well. It's dreary, it's catchy, slightly, and there's a lot of dense serenity here. It just works. I give it like a 9 out of 10. Again, top 10 material for sure. I don't know if it'll make my album of the year, but it's one that I genuinely like pretty heavily.
If you what you want to, baby, how dare you treat me just like a boy? You won't.
I didn't talk about 9-track Mind, but I did listen to it. I gave it like a 2 out of 10. It was one of my worst albums of the year that it came out, and I wasn't hoping for much from Charlie Puth's latest album until I heard attention. That guy does not deserve that good of a bass line, first off. But, regardless, it got me a little interested to hear his next record. I've been following Charlie Puth since his YouTube days. I didn't know that he became big. My introduction to Charlie Puth's stint in the pop sphere was similar to my introduction to The Weeknd's stint in the pop sphere. I really liked The Weeknd's trilogy mixtapes. I listened to them back when I was graduating high school, but he fell off the map to me. It wasn't until I heard Can't Feel My Face that I was like, is that The Weeknd? I heard The Hills, and I was like, that's definitely The Weeknd. What, the Abel made it? I had the same thing with Charlie Puth. I heard Marvin Gaye, and I was like, who is this? Charlie Puth became something? What the fuck? But, nevertheless, Voice Notes is a huge improvement over 9-Track Mind, if only because he realized what kind of singer he was. One of my biggest issues with 9-Track Mind is that Charlie Puth tried so hard to do retro 50s throwback, but his voice is suited for 90s pop. And hey, he fucking made a 90s pop album, and while it's not great, there are some clumsy moments, like in Boy, as you heard in the pre-review snippet. There's hooks like that, and there's moments like that that just feel a little clumsy. I don't think this is his emotion by any stretch of the imagination. It doesn't redeem him, but it does show a growth. The lyric sheet on here is a little more harnessed. His voice is a little better utilized, like I said, by having the 90s pop thing. But the lyrics are a little more aware of that as well. It's not trying to be the next, catchy trend for kids. There are lyrics on a handful of tracks like LA Girls and even Attention and Boy, and other songs like If You Leave Me Now, which has a really good utilization of Boyz II Men that I don't talk about in the actual review, that showcase more thought put into the lyrics in terms of having a narrative or having a cohesive follow-through with its concepts. And I just liked that there was a little more thought put into it. Charlie Puth just wrote an album that felt a little more himself while having cuts that still feel like they're part of the product corporate machine, but there's a little more of him shining through on here, and I feel like that's why this is not his emotion, but his unorthodox jukebox. Because let's be honest, Charlie Puth is probably only going to be good when he's... I give this thing like a 5 out of 10. Let's move on. My history with Out the Gates is pretty blunt. I like them, and I've been listening to them for a while. This new album was something I was kind of looking forward to, and I think it pays off well. It's pretty standard melodic death metal. It's nothing mind-blowing like their first couple of records are. But I will say, after hearing their contributions to the newest Orphan Land, I did get a little more excited because, well, I fucking forgot how much I like these guys. And to me, this is akin to Golden Age Amon Amarth. It's mixed similarly. The guitars are just jagged and gritty. The vocals are just harsh and just in your face. And the whole thing is just consistently that throughout the runtime. There's some moments where there's a little more to the composition, but it's nothing that I would say is out of character for these guys. It's your standard pretty good metal album. There's a couple of those every year. This is that album. I think that these guys, present a sound that isn't new to metal, but they don't need to. They're out the gates. They have a legacy of classics behind them. I don't think anyone's gonna hate them for putting together just an okay album. I like some of the more epic moments that this album aims for, and I think that the musicianship is still as tight here as I would expect it to be from these guys. I give it like a 7 out of 10. I don't have a whole lot else to say other than if you like melodic death metal, you're gonna like this. If you want their golden age material, go fucking listen to that shit. you've been following the listening logs ever since I started doing them, you'll notice I review every EP these guys drop. I got into these guys through Ninja Sex Party because they collaborated together, and they do the full band instrumentals for that band, and I've been wanting them to do an album since I got into them, and boy, did this pay off. I know not a whole lot of the blogosphere is going to talk about this. That's why I'm doing it, because I feel like more people should listen to these guys. If you don't know who TWRP are, it stands for Tupperware Remix Party. They're a Canadian synth-funk band with a really fully realized sound. It's very space age, it's very retro in a very niche way. It's not a gimmick because synth-funk is a thing, but their vocals are very vocoder infused if they're not having a guest vocalist on, and they do a lot of these kind of cock rocky guitars, and they're known for really good instrumental passages on their EPs. And this thing, it fucking wowed me. I wasn't expecting some of the shit on here. The song they have with Dan Avidan is the same standard. It's good. If you like those two forces together, you're not going to be disappointed. But, dude, fucking a Protoman Tupperware Remix Party Ego Raptor song is what I needed in my life. And it's also an homage to Speed Racer, which is kind of fully both of those, all three of those guys' aesthetics. That's just a dream come true, and it's fully realized. Songs like The Perfect Product, Synthesize Her, and Life Party all kind of have these imagery of neo-futurism and a very, again, retro style. It's not it's not Batman's future, it's the Jetsons' future. And I like that shit, man. And I think these guys fucking get it. They have a lot of style, they have really crisp production that suits their style, and these guys have a lot of talent, and I just want to expose you to them. Go check them out. It's not my favorite of the year by any means, but goddamn, if it is just everything that hits my aesthetic, I give it like an 8 out of 10. That might grow, but I was comfortable with an 8. Protoman, please put out Act 3 this year. I've been waiting. You said it was coming soon when I saw you live, and that was 2 years ago. So I frankly was not expecting to be wowed by this thing, only because I feel like Lamb of God are almost the 2000s answer to Slayer, and I mean that in a very positive way, because I like Slayer, and you guys might know, I like Lamb of God. I did a discography review on them, if you didn't know that. But they are so intrinsically tied to their style, their sound. You hear a Lamb of God song, you know exactly what it's going to sound like, and I was really confused when they announced they were doing a covers album with their old moniker. I think that's a great way to do it, you know, if you're not wanting to put it under your band's name, but it's fucking weird. And the covers they chose to do, some of them make sense, kind of, like Bad Brains to an extent, Ministry, kind of, but it's all, like, weird. Some of the cuts are really weird, like they did Jesus Built My Hot Rod, which doesn't have Jorgen on vocals, and has the singer from the Butthole Surfers on there, which, again, kind of makes sense for Lamb of God, but I don't know, it's weird. Hearing this was like hearing Slayer's punk album. It was very out of character for them, but it kind of made sense. You know what I mean? I don't think the production matches some of these songs. Like, hearing Big Black with this kind of production was a little weird. It's just, there's a lot of weirdness going on here. I think they play the songs well because they're talented guys, but I'm really torn with this thing because I don't love it. I don't love it. I think it's weird. It's like, I don't know, it's like a magician trying to fucking bartend. That doesn't make sense, you know? It's a really weird album, but I don't hate it. I think it's okay. I think if you really like Lamb of God, you'll probably like this. I love Lamb of God, and I had issues with this only because it's something I'm not fully sold on. Some of the covers work. I kind of like their Bad Brains cover. I don't think it's bad. Their Melvin's cover's okay. But there's just some weird shit on here that I don't think works as well as they were hoping to. But it's the songs that kind of fit their soundscape that or in their production style that work. And yeah, this thing is at like a 6 out of 10. Partially because it's weird. It's more weird than I can muster, and this is coming from me.
I can remember the perfect view.
You know, I've been sitting with this album for the last 3 months, and I'm finally sitting down talking about it. And it's not because I think this thing is dense and hard to get into and just a mishmash of too much. It's just because it's a little too long. I know I talk about that a lot, but there's a lot of albums that I've loved that keep my interest. And I love this thing. I genuinely, like, my rating is decently high for this album, but it's hard to sit through this much glam rock for me, man. Like, I like glam rock, but I'm not in love with glam rock. And while I respect the fuck out of Ty Segall for doing glam rock justice, it's just not it's not something I wholly enjoy in large settings. And it's not that this thing is criminally long. They could just use a little trim, use a little fat cutting, you know what I mean? There's a lot that works. I like a lot of the brass choices on here. I like that there's a lot of really nice crescendos. Some of the guitar licks on here are fucking sweet. And I think it is beautiful that they did a Hot Chocolate cover on here. But this was my introduction to Ty Segall too. And I know he's not this type of musician. So this is like the last record, just a weird experience. And it's one that I've been sitting with for a couple months. I think the band is tight. I think the songs are well written. And I like the composition. But something about it, I just can't fully love. But I do give it like a 7 out of 10. It's a great record. There's a lot here. If you like glam rock, it is a great love letter to the genre. And I like some glam rock a lot, actually. This album was just in desperate need of a good trim. Like a good 5 or 6 songs could have been removed from this thing. It would have been a much tighter package while keeping some of the eccentricities he's known for and having that balance of guitar, or garage rock, and glam rock executed beautifully. Talking about covers albums, Power Glove put out a new album. If you don't know who they are, they're a band that mostly does video game covers and Saturday morning cartoon covers if you listen to their second album. But these guys kind of take that sound or that idea and just metalize it up. They're a metal cover band and they do a video game and Saturday morning cartoons. And while I think their first EP is one of my favorites of all time. I fucking love their first EP and they do a lot of really cool ideas. It's hard to keep that train rolling, and this is a great example as to what I mean by that. Some of this works. Some of this works really well, and these guys still know what to pick and make heavy. Anything Mega Man, it's a safe bet. Unless you turn the Mega Man 3 intro into a 4-minute song, then it's a little much. But by the by, these guys know what games translate well into metal. Castlevania, Mega Man, JRPGs. Anything overly dramatic, it's going to translate well. Kirby translates really well. Guile's theme, beautiful. Works with everything, works when they do it. But there's some things that just, a little much. Highwind Takes to the Skies. I've never played Final Fantasy VII, but some of the other cuts on here from that game work better than that. Under the Sea didn't need to fucking happen. The second half of Kraid's Lair didn't need to happen. I think they could have done a great rendition of that song. It's a great fucking tune. It's 6 minutes long, man. Cut it down. I know you're a power metal band, and I love power metal. You're talking to a guy who I love some really good power metal, but it's a little much. It's a little much. Trim it down a little bit. The fucking Chrono Trigger song. I never played Chrono Trigger. It's a beautiful fucking medley. Power Glove has done better. They've done it more consistent, and that's my piece. 6 out of 10. We got 2 more left.
Struggle to survive.
This is a request I got back in February. It was done by the guy who wanted me to do Gaia Extremities. He requested Legend of the Seagullman, which is a Mastodon and Tool side project. Very gimmicky, almost a little Ailstormish at times, but it doesn't feel like that all the time. Legend of the Seagullman is an album about theatrics and sticking to an idea. These guys put together a pretty fun project. it takes itself just the right amount of serious to be engaging. It's a little absurd. It's about this idea, this concept of seafarers, which suits Mastodon, so that's cool. I think Curse of the Red Tide and the Orca, I fucking love the Orca, because it's whales, it's a Mastodon member writing about whales again, and that's cool. That gave me really nice flashbacks lyrically, and sonically, this isn't what I was expecting whatsoever. This thing is really mellow, really soft, there's a lot of orchestration on here that works, but I don't expect to work because it just sounds like a hokey idea. It sounds like you have a band whose gimmick is they're talking about the Seagull Men, whatever the fuck that is, and you're gonna make it soft and orchestrated at points. That sounds terrible. It works. It works really well. Ballad of the Deep Sea Diver is just a beautiful, lush, very lush, well-produced cut that, again, shouldn't work. But they just nail it. They nail it very well. And it's the right amount of self-aware and earnest for me to just enjoy it. Thank you for the suggestion. 7 out of 10. One more to go.
Have you had Caucasian feelings that you so distraught? Are you not done now?
These guys were the ones to do it. They were the ones to overthrow Janelle for the crown of my album of the month. Parquet Courts are a band that I've invested a little bit of time in. There was a girl I was talking to a couple years ago that showed me them, and I enjoyed what I heard. They're kind of dance, punky, old school sounding band. But man, have they just perfected that craft here. There were so many moments of this that reminded me of like early Talking Heads, which had an LCD sound system twist on some of the cuts. Early Gang of Four, that late 70s dance punky sound is just perfected here, from the sharp, very tight lyricism to the absolutely amazing production, which was done by Danger Mouse. I think there's a lot on here that is intrinsically American, very sharp, very political, very witty, kind of akin to Gang of Four and LCD Sound System's good material. There's some really aggressive cuts that work. The split cut almost had to start a fight, In and Out of Patience. One of my favorite cuts of the year. The way that they shift it, that the rhythm shifts, so good. So fucking good. The title track on this thing is so goddamn good. The opener, the big middle finger to Mr. Brady. I don't even like sports, and that gave me some joy. There's a lot here for everyone to enjoy. And I feel like if you're a fan of dancey punk music, you're definitely going to like this thing. I do. A lot of the blogosphere does. I'm also giving it a 9 out of 10 and making it my album of the month. Strong album of the year contender. I fucking love this thing. But that's it. It's my video for the month. If you have any albums you would like me to do, please suggest them in the things down below. Next month I have a couple albums I'm wanting to get to that I've missed, but let's see if I get to them in the next month. I have been Viral Rack. You guys are good at situations, and I'll see you another day.